The rand breaking that 670 mark and really seeing a strength or risk appetite really bolstering the strength in the local unit. What have you made of the movement we've seen on that front over the past 24 hours?
Good morning, Alishia. Yes, well, once again, we've seen the rand tracking those euro-dollar movements pretty closely. And of course, we had that interest rate hike out of Europe yesterday. It was in line with expectations, but what was heartening to see for the Eurobulls perspective is that the ECB is now going to allow Portuguese debt to remain a good quality collateral for liquidity within the region. So it seems as though there won't be any liquidity squeeze within the Eurozone, which is of course one of the big threats associated with the sovereign debt crisis. If we get downgrades and suddenly those bonds are no longer good enough for cash from the European Central Bank, then it can create a bit of a liquidity squeeze. So that was encouraging. We saw the euro strengthening as a result, and of course then the rand strengthened on the back of that as well. The other factor, of course, that contributed to the stronger rand yesterday was some encouraging employment figures out of the States. So once again, risk appetite, a firmer euro was the catalyst for the rand pushing a bit lower.
You touched on the positive data that filtered through from the US, and yet we didn't see the dollar strengthen on the back of that. So let's run through that dollar position right now and where you see the dollar headed. Is it more a matter of who wins the battle between the Eurozone and the US in terms of bringing to the market encouraging and positive news?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. In years gone by, if we had encouraging employment figures out of the States, we would have seen the dollar probably rallying because employment creation bodes well for overall GDP within a country. But of late, it still has been the race to the bottom, if you like, for both the euro and the US. They actually both want their currencies to be as weak as possible to try and stimulate growth. But what we've seen is we've seen the dollar more recently benefiting when sovereign debt risks come to the fore in Europe, or we start seeing some risk aversion, doubts about the global recovery. When that happens, then we start to see the dollar strengthening. So yesterday, even though the employment figures were encouraging, it actually didn't help the dollar because it suggested that the global recovery is firmly on track, and as a result risk appetite increased, and people then used the dollar once again as a kind of a funding currency to buy high yielding assets like the rand.
While a risk appetite increases, in the current environment, investors are likely to get only so risky in their investment bets, and with that we've got developments on home ground that has to have stolen some attention. And with this, I'm referring specifically to the strike action we're seeing and what that's doing to confidence levels when it comes to South Africa's stability as a whole.
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. For some time now, the rand has really been just tracking international factors and ignoring domestic developments, ignoring domestic data releases, etc. But yeah, I think all's not well on the home front if we look at that strike activity. And of course, if it starts to filter through into more and more man days being lost, it's not going to help South Africa's economic recovery prospects. And of course, that's something that an investor would need to bear in mind when engaging in kind of long-term investments into the country. They want to know that stability exists and that things like strike activity are few and far between rather than the regular occurrence. And I think we're starting to see the possibility of the strike activity actually spreading to other sectors of the economy. So I think from a growth perspective it is a bit concerning, and at the moment the international investors are ignoring it, but I don't think we should say that it's going to remain like that forever. At some point these investors will express a bit of nervousness, and that could take its toll on the rand.